Walpurgis Night, 1932. Stockholm celebrates spring. Somewhere in the Atlas district, a woman named Lilly Lindeström spends her final hours alive. Days later, police force open her apartment and discover a body drained of blood, a gravy ladle left at the scene. The press called the killer the Atlas vampire. Nearly a century on, no one has been identified. The truth may be stranger than the legend. Sankt Eriksplan in the early 1930s was a bustling focal point of northwest Stockholm, where tram lines converged amidst a rapidly modernizing city. Just off the main square lay the Atlas Quarter. Once an industrial zone, it had transitioned into a tightly packed residential enclave characterized by four-story brick apartment blocks. Built to accommodate the city's expanding working-class population, the neighborhood pulsed with a dense, anonymous energy. Hundreds of small, single-room flats lined the cobblestone streets, creating an environment where privacy was a luxury, and neighbors lived separated only by thin plaster walls. At Sankt Eriksplan 11, Lilly Lindeström occupied one of these modest, one-room apartments. Municipal registers and residency records paint a sparse but clear picture of her daily existence. At 32, she lived alone, facing the economic pressures of interwar Sweden. In a society grappling with rapid urban growth and economic instability, she worked quietly as a sex worker from her flat. Her life was defined not by the sensational legends that would later emerge, but by the quiet, everyday struggle for survival common to many in the district. The physical layout of her home and the dense urban layout of Atlas provided a cloak of anonymity. It was a setting where individuals could slip in and out of the shadows unnoticed, creating a quiet distance between neighbors even in close quarters. This surrounding city, filled with transition and quiet anxieties, shaped her world long before the police ever crossed her threshold. On the morning of May 2nd, 1932, the quiet routine of Sankt Eriksplan 11 fractured. Minnie Jansen, a downstairs neighbor who also worked in the local trade, knocked on Lilly Lindeström's door. There was no answer. The two had spent the afternoon of Walpurgis Night just days earlier planning holiday costumes, making the sudden, persistent silence highly unusual. After repeated attempts to establish contact over the next 24 hours yielded no response, Jansen's growing alarm prompted her to notify the Stockholm police. Late on the night of May 3rd, officers arrived at the Atlas district apartment block. Finding the door secured from within, they forced entry, officially stepping into the flat in the early hours of May 4th. Inside the silent, one-room home, officers confirmed the neighbors' worst fears. Lilly Lindeström was dead, having been deceased for several days. The first officer on the scene immediately began compiling the written record, ensuring the physical environment was preserved through official documentation rather than memory. The initial police log and hand-drawn crime scene diagrams reconstruct a stark, quiet scene. The victim lying face down on the bed, her clothing folded nearby. In discussing this discovery, archival press accounts often employed sensational, moralizing language, yet the actual police records maintain a sober, procedural focus. With the filing of this first incident report, the quiet disappearance of an Atlas resident became a formal, high-stakes homicide investigation. The Stockholm police approached the crime scene with the standard scientific tools of 1932. Investigators focused heavily on fingerprint comparison, a method developed in the early decades of the century. Technicians dusted the apartment's surfaces, the kitchen doorframe, and the windowsill, collecting prints on inked index cards to match against a manual registry. Without automated databases, officers had to compare these cards by eye, a slow process that required an exact suspect card already on file. Similarly, the blood evidence presented stark limitations. Forensic serology at the time relied on basic ABO blood group typing. This test could confirm that the blood on the kitchen utensil matched Lindeström's blood type, but it could not identify an individual. Unlike modern DNA profiling, which can pinpoint a single suspect from a microscopic drop, 1930s testing could only exclude broad groups of people. It could prove who the blood did not belong to, but never exactly who it did. Faced with these technical boundaries, the inquiry turned to traditional street work. Detectives combed through Lindeström's social circle, questioning her neighbors and known contacts. They systematically identified and interrogated 9 of her recent clients. Each man denied involvement, and without physical evidence to connect them to the apartment, their statements could not be disproven. The written case file grew with transcripts of these interviews, yet the concrete leads remained sparse. The investigation remained open and active, but the lack of advanced forensic science left the file thin, relying on memories and paper records that offered no clear path forward. With the official inquiry stalled, Stockholm's press stepped into the vacuum, transforming a tragic apartment murder into an enduring Gothic legend. Within days of the discovery, newspapers like Aftonbladet, Dagens Nyheter, and Svenska Dagbladet began using a phrase that would forever define the mystery: the Atlas vampire. This sensational moniker shifted the public focus from a sober criminal investigation to a dark, folklore-fueled narrative. The press seized upon the blood-stained gravy ladle found in the sink, using it to spin lurid theories of blood-draining rituals. While archival files show these ideas were purely speculative, the imagery captured the city's imagination. Newspapers quickly divided the crime into 2 competing theories. The first, a client-centered theory favored by Dagens Nyheter, suggested the killer was a regular customer. Because there was no sign of a struggle or forced entry, journalists speculated that Lilly must have trusted her attacker, framing the tragedy as an intimate encounter that turned violent. In contrast, Svenska Dagbladet championed a stranger theory. They focused on a mysterious telephone call from an unknown man on Walpurgis night, arguing that a predatory outsider had targeted her, using the unusual crime scene details to suggest a compulsive psychopathic attacker lurking in the shadows of St. Eriksplan. These archival reports often viewed the tragedy through a deeply gendered, moralizing lens. Contemporary articles frequently described Lilly by her occupation, using patronizing language that subtly blamed her lifestyle for her fate. But as these competing ideas filled the headlines, the line between verified police facts and public mythology began to blur. The theories remained speculation, and the true identity of the person who entered the apartment at St. Eriksplan 11 stayed out of reach, lost in the noise of a media-driven sensation. By 1957, Sweden's statute of limitations expired, officially closing the legal case. The investigation ended without an arrest. The files simply moved into quiet preservation. Inconsistent witness statements, the degradation of physical evidence, and the biological limitations of 1930s testing left the file unresolved. Yet, the story did not disappear. Today, the physical remnants of the investigation reside in public collections, allowing researchers to study the original facts. At the Stockholm Police Museum, visitors can view the crime scene diagram catalogued as A1932-03 and the original fingerprint cards under record A1932-02. Across the city, the Stockholm City Archives preserve the handwritten interrogation notebooks under case file A1932-04. These primary sources offer a sober look at the reality of Lilly Lindeström's death, stripping away the vampire mythology to reveal a tragic human mystery. Nearly a century later, the cold files remind us of the boundaries of early forensic science and the fragility of memory. What do you believe is the most compelling piece of evidence left behind at St. Eriksplan? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more historical true crime documentaries. Nearly a century later, Lilly Lindeström remains a sensational headline rather than a remembered life. The truth lies buried in silent archives, forever out of reach. Does the answer still hide in Stockholm's shadows? Share your thoughts below. Subscribe for more.